Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. Today's guest is DeJarvis Leonard. He is the region engineer for ALDOT, the Alabama Department of Transportation, and inextricably intertwined in what we are either about to experience or are currently experiencing, and that is the takedown of the 2059 bridge, I'll call it. Is there any other way to call it?
It's the elevated section of 5920.
Yeah,
through
the elevated
CBD.
section next to the Civic Center.
We call it the Central Business District bridges.
Quite a controversial subject, but we're not here to be controversial. We're here to talk about practicalities and realities and what we're going to be dealing with and how we're going to deal with it. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up sitting here in this chair having to answer these questions.
Well, I was fortunate enough to get recruited to come to work for the Alabama Department of Transportation, which was then called the Highway Department, in 1979 to work as a trainee. And I started working part-time while I was attending school, and had an opportunity to graduate from Alabama A&M University with Civil Engineering Technology, and I did some further studies at Auburn University to get a civil engineering degree. After finishing that, I continued to work in the Auburn area, and when 565 started its project in Huntsville, I transferred to Huntsville and had an opportunity to work on that major interstate project, and had an opportunity.
Well, that was smooth. That's very smooth.
It's congested. 30 years later, they're having to do improvements there, I think. And then had an opportunity to move into management after finishing those projects, and had an opportunity 20 years ago to come back to the East Central area to serve as what was then the division engineer. ALDOT was then broken up into 9 divisions. And for 16 years, I was the division engineer for the 4th Division, which was housed in Alexander City. And then in 2015, ALDOT went to a regional concept, 5 regions. And I was fortunate enough to be selected to serve as the East Central region engineer for ALDOT, which includes 2 areas, the Birmingham area and the Alex City area. And so that's how I ended up in Birmingham since 2015.
And that region is bigger than its predecessor region because it covers more counties.
The division previously was 10 counties. This region has 12 counties, and it includes all of metropolitan Birmingham also.
The teardown of the 2059, what'd you call it?
5029 bridges, Central Business District.
Central Business District. That plan has been in place for years, correct?
It has. It's been ongoing. Even before I got here, that was a plan to do something with that section of the roadway. What has happened is the deck, which is the concrete deck, is in very poor condition, and it had to be replaced. And in the process, we looked at a couple of options of just replacing the deck, and we looked at other options when we decided finally to actually not only replace the deck, but replace the whole bridge. That gave us an opportunity to improve the infrastructure in Birmingham, especially some of the ramps at 65 and 5920 and at Red Mountain Expressway and 31st Street, to improve the ability to maneuver through downtown Birmingham. And so that's sort of the history in a nutshell.
There was litigation about the issue of why it wasn't moved further north.
Correct.
And some people not nearly as trained as you are, the armchair quarterbacks, for lack of a better word, believe, why didn't they just take it from Finley Avenue? on the other side. And I'm sure there's a valid reason of why that occurred or didn't occur.
Correct. There were several concerns about moving the 5920 section of CBD Bridge through from downtown and moving it out to Finley. Studies was done by ALDOT to determine that some of the things that was proposed was not capable of happening. The other issue is that this deck is in such poor condition, it needed to be replaced immediately.
Well, it's not just the deck, what I'm hearing. It was the underlying steel structure as well.
Well, the steel structure is not in near as poor condition as the deck itself. And so the bridge needed to be replaced. To move a corridor of that magnitude to the Finley corridor, it would take 15, 20, maybe 30 years to get through the environmental process to make all that happen.
Wow.
Therefore, timing was an essence. So we had to move forward and try to move forward at the location we had, and then and make it work. And it has worked. And I think we have an opportunity to improve the infrastructure here in Birmingham.
For those people that are skeptical, which are a lot of people, I believe you were involved in the 280 rerouting system, were you not?
The improvements that were made on 280, that actually happened right before I got here. I came in on the tail end of that project.
If the proof is in the pudding, even though it took a bit to get used to, there's not a person out there that doesn't, I think, believe that it improved things tremendously.
The travel times have improved greatly, significantly over that period of time.
I live out that way.
Right.
It's a little goofy beyond 459 heading out, but getting out to the waterworks in Rocky Ridge, you know, the U-turn piece and all that, it's just a matter of training the brain.
And it is, and I could tell you a story about that. But
tell me when we come back from break. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We're all being educated today about the teardown of the bridge by DeJarvis Leonard. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We're talking about recent developments in our highway system around the city of Birmingham. And DeJarvis Leonard, our region engineer, is here to discuss that. You were about to tell us a story about 280?
Yes, I was visiting Virginia Beach, Newport News area a while back, and I have a cousin who actually grew up in Michigan. And these U-turn type scenarios, sometimes I call them Michigan lefts.
Michigan lefts?
Yeah, because Michigan has incorporated that in a lot of their roadways in Michigan. And so he comes to pick me up and take me to the airport, and oddly enough, he would not go straight across an intersection. The mindset of growing up in Michigan had taught him to go right and do a U-turn to come back.
Oh, really?
And so the mindset you were talking about is when you get used to that mindset of making those maneuvers, it's about training drivers.
Yeah, train and retraining the brain.
That's correct.
To adapt to it.
That is correct.
You know, I'm Italian. I guess that's not a secret, but if you've ever tried to drive in a big city in Italy, it's a challenging experience. They believe street signs and traffic devices to be mere suggestions, not necessarily to be followed.
Okay.
And it's very odd. So for the citizen who's about to have to embark on a new course of action to get to and from wherever he's been going, the way he's been going for so many years, what do you suggest people do? Start planning alternative routes now? I know there's some public service announcements being made.
Right.
There's a couple of websites out there to give direction, but what can you share with us?
Well, we have a very robust public awareness campaign that we're putting on the television, the radio stations, billboards, and we have a website, 5920bridge.com, 5920bridge.com, and we encourage motorists to go to that website and utilize that website to identify the detour routes. and identify better locations and maneuvers that they can take in order to avoid the closed section of the 5920 CBD bridges. It's important, and we encourage motorists, if in any way possible, to use 459 and 65 if you're trying to go all the way around. We think, based on the travel times, that it would be better that you do utilize those routes versus trying to go through the detours on the surface streets. Now, if you have to just go through downtown, we understand that you'll have to use the detours, but we encourage motorists, the first option should be 459.
Mm-hmm. But is 65 ready for that now? I think 65 is about
We opened
finished.
the interchange at 65 and 5920 back at the end of August. So all the new ramps are functioning in their full capacity.
So north-south, 65, east-west, 459. Is that essentially, if you were a driver, if you were going to go west or east, use 459?
That's correct.
If you're going to go north or south, use 65.
That is correct. And like I said, you need to identify your routes. If you have to go through downtown, there are several detours you can use. The primary detour that we're making available is utilizing Caraway to Finley Boulevard. Finley Boulevard now is a state route. It's State Route 378. We made a swap with the city. They took over University, and we took over Finley Boulevard several years ago. We improved it, paved it. It is a 6-lane facility. And if you drive it on a normal day, there is very little traffic on it. We had a traffic engineers to do some analysis, and based on the increase in volumes that we anticipate with the shutdown, the travel times should only increase about 5% on that route because it's not used that much currently. Mm-hmm. And so
it's about to be.
It is, but we still feel that the travel time increase would only be about 5%. So if you can go from Caraway to Arkadelphia in 5 minutes, so it's only going to increase another minute for you with the increased traffic.
So there's a lot of fear of the unknown, I think.
Yes.
Well, that's true with life, I think, as well. When is, I'll call it D-Day?
It is yet to be determined.
But it's coming.
It is coming, and it's not far out. One of the things that we're holding the contractor to is that we really need him to finish some ramps before we close it.
Is the contractor, I know he's made some everybody's anticipating it to take 12 months. I know in their business, they're penalized for taking longer than they're supposed to, and they're rewarded for making it happen quicker. Is that going on in this instance?
It is, and I can explain that to you in
Please.
detail.
Well, I tell you what, save it, because I want to hear about it. They work at night, mostly.
24 hours a day.
They're working 24 hours a day?
Yes.
On something?
Yes, primarily.
But when they really need to do some heavy lifting, it's at nighttime, I think.
Some of it is.
Yeah, some of it is. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back. This is good stuff. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We were talking about incentives and punitive measures that are put on the contractors for their progress in completing the job. And you were going to tell us about that. So how's that work?
What we have done is we've set up 14 months, 425 days for the contractor to demo and to reconstruct the 2 bridges of the elevated section of the Central Business District through downtown. The contractor has an incentive, disincentive for every day that he can shave off that 14 months. For every day he can shave off that 14 months, it's $250,000 a day incentive. However, if he goes past 14 months, that doesn't end. For every day he goes past 14 months, he has to pay disincentive of $250,000 also.
Well, does that open the door for maybe putting too much emphasis on speed as opposed to quality? I know there are a lot of checks and balances in the system.
Right.
There has to be. So it's not like, okay, Mr. Contractor, get busy.
Right.
Because every step along the way, there's somebody like you inspecting what he's done, right?
I'm one engineer. I'm the region engineer, but there are hundreds of other engineers who are working on this project.
Are they out there?
They're out there on our side. We have consultants who are managing the project for us as inspectors. The contractor has a large number of engineers who are working on their side. There are designers who are constantly involved in this project. So, like I said, I'm one engineer that you see, but there are hundreds of engineers who have been involved and will continuously be involved in this process of finishing this bridge to completion.
And I know you're not a betting man, but do you think it can be done quicker? You have so many variables, weather being the most important one, I would think. Is it doable in a shorter period of time?
The contractor has taken some steps.
Aside from the $15 million, which would be a pretty good incentive.
Right. The contractor has taken some steps. We're using segmental construction. So it's going to go together like a puzzle. And then it'll be post-tension between each column and where it'll be supported. But the contractor has also made a decision to precast some of the columns. And if you out there near the Sheraton, some of those columns have already been erected.
Yeah, I've seen them sitting out there.
And so they've actually precast some of the columns. Not only did they precast the columns, but they also went in underneath the existing bridge and was able to get in all the footings, many as possible prior to the closure. Mm-hmm. So almost all of the footings, the actual supports under the ground, is already in place. They'll cover those up, demo the bridge, uncover those, and start erecting the columns, and then be able to move forward with the actual segmental construction. And so they've taken steps to help minimize the time. And I think based on the scenarios and things that we've seen with this process in other places, they have a shot to make it happen.
Obviously, a project like this is not inexpensive.
Correct.
Just this segment that we're talking about, rough guesstimate on what the cost involved?
$475 million.
And I'd have to ask, who's paying for it? Where's the funding come from?
It is going to be used federal funds. We actually are having to finance this project, and we'll have to use future federal funds to help pay for that finance.
So we're borrowing money from the federal government, and then we're paying money back to the federal government from money we get from the federal government.
We sold bonds, and we have bonds that are sold.
Sounds like Social Security.
But
they take our money, they use it, then they give it back, and they tax us, and then they give it back to us 40 years later, and then they tax us again on it after they've used it for 40 years.
Well, this is a project.
Not complaining.
Yeah.
I like Medicare.
This project is of such significance that it had to move forward. And so the decision was made to finance this project through bonds, and they'll be paid off, like I said, for the next 15 to 20 years to utilizing future federal funds.
And on the back end, once it's complete, what would you anticipate to be the most beneficial to the citizen who has had to endure this 12 to 14 month, what's perceived to be a horror show? But I'm with you. If the things are happening as you're saying they're happening, it may not be as bad as everybody thinks it's going to be.
Correct.
I hope that's what people come away from the show with.
Right.
And just settle down and take it one day at a time. But
yes.
What do you see if you had to?
Well, I hope what we've done at the interchange at I-65 and 5920 and the improvements we made there is evidence of what the new road will look like in the future.
It's higher.
It's higher, but it's the what we call the level of service, which is a measurement of the congestion. I think it's gone down, and we have evidence of that, and we've seen that. The new section through downtown will have 3 lanes, just like it always has, going all the way through, but it will also have auxiliary lanes that will connect Red Mountain Expressway and 65 in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
But it will also have 12-foot shoulders where you have no shoulders today.
Yeah.
If you have a stalled vehicle downtown Birmingham, it backs up everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have an opportunity to get that stalled vehicle on the shoulder, and the traffic continues to flow. The other thing that we have improved on is the interchanges. The interchanges where we had all the weaves and the merge, they're all gone away. We don't have them.
Malfunction junction.
Well, we call it, it's a new name now, I think.
What is it?
5920 and 65, but it
doesn't have a rhyming name.
It functions now.
Oh, function junction. Function junction.
But anyway, we don't have all those ramps coming in and out of the main line. To avoid all those conflicts, that allows us to see the level of service continue to move rapidly through that section. So the congestion through downtown Birmingham should be significantly better once we finish.
Well, thanks for being on the show and sharing with us this information.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for having me.
Don't be afraid, folks. Just stay in the moment and get in your car and go the best way you can, as he's indicated, to where you need to get to. We'll see you next week.